Now, here we're back again with the great book. This is a book which is a compendium of a lot. At the point we're at right now, I'm skipping around and moving pretty quickly. There is a lot of repetition in different places. But the basic ideas that we want to say are here, and there's much, much more. So this is Jacob Kronenberg's book. We're going to come over here to pick up where we left off yesterday. Let me see if I can find the place. Right here. So this is a very important idea. Although the Gentiles and Gentile astrology, which is called Western astrology or Eastern astrology, using the same planets and many of the same combinations and understandings of ideas of the powers of the planets, the one main difference is going to be stated now by Reb Yaakov Kronenberg. It says, now we get to the part in this source which is my main purpose for mentioning all this now. We talked about the power of the sun and Saturn and so on and so forth. And though the planets rule over the doing of both the bad and the good that happens on the earth, they do not have permission to instigate good or bad according to their own understanding. And this is a point that the Brisa makes, that the planets, according to Judaism, are just appointed to fill their tasks. And this is the most important part, and are agents of God, which we understand is the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Now, if we get further on in this book, he's going to bring us into some really heavy-duty analysis of how we know all of that. So let's go. So he says, let's go on to the next part. Let's pick up a little bit more. I'm going to try to get myself this bridged up a little bit. So he says, in future talks, we will discuss a book by a Kabbalist called the Leshem Shvo V'Achuma. So the Leshem was a person who was in the line of the Vilna Gaon, it's a Litvak, and he had tremendous compendium that he has written, and everybody wants to be a part of it, who's a Kabbalist. So the question is asked, why did God had to create planets in the solar system to rule and channel all the energies he sends down? His answer is brief, is that because Adam, the first man, sinned, God had to distance himself as if then was not possible for him, as if it was then that it was not possible for him to send all his bounty directly to humanity, because we couldn't handle it. Once the forefather of all humanity was off the derech, that it was not possible for him to become a vessel to be able to hold all the light of the Ein Sof, and had to use the solar system in all the different worlds, which are called the Sia, Yitzira, Beria, and Etzilos. Now, these are all the distances. We are in a Sia, so start from the top, from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, wrapping the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu and minimizing it to such an extent that we can digest it if we're open to be able to find it. So he says that he used the solar system as intermediaries to serve as his delivery system to bring down his energies to us. But do not think that these intermediaries are the source of the works and then start worshiping the planets and the stars as they were doing the work and are independent powers by themselves, and that is idolatry. This cuts the planets from their source and makes idols of the planets. The Jews who followed the tradition always knew that the planets and stars are only agents of Hashem, who carry out his tradition, his will, and don't have the ability to do good or bad by themselves. So if one has a problem, the solution, and here it is to pray, not to the planets. And this is a big, big point that we want to make. We'll make it over and over again. And this seems to be the main point. We don't pray to the planets, we pray to the maker of the planets. And this seems to be the main point, that the solution is to pray to God, that this Bryce is making. The text continues, and although the planets rule over the bad and they rule over the good, they don't have any permission to do good or bad according to their own understanding. But everything is done by the instruction of God, who calls out the commandments to the planets. Now, we're not talking here in simplicity of how he calls them out. He said God is not a man, and so that God doesn't use his vocal cords unless we saw it in a very, very metaphoric and Kabbalistic way to be able to understand the process of taking a light which is totally undigestible for us, who would destroy us in a second, in less than a second, and minimizing it enough to be able for us to be able to receive that bounty, that blessing. Everything is done by God's command. Everything is done by what he who created everything instructs. And so it is said in Yirmiyahu, that's Jeremiah chapter 10. So the verse says like this: the gratitude and praising belongs to God, which is Hashem. Don't fear the idols, which are the planets, for they cannot cause evil. And how do you know that everything is done from God's calling on out his instructions? For it says, and God called out a fast upon the earth. And it also says in Yirmiyahu, for Hashem, for behold, I call all families of the northern kingdoms, that I am going to do evil. And to where they learned it, God calls out good, as it says, and he calls out in the desert, make way for God's path, make a straight road for the people, for the Lord our God will do good. So you've learned that the planets have no permission to do good or bad from their own volition, unless they are given permission by the master of all, which is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is Hashem. And I think I might have gone over where we were here, where you couldn't see the last part, but you could read it again. So he says, he's quoting here different places that we see that the whole power rests with the Kodesh Baruch. So he says, let's read a little bit more. And he said, let us continue with the letter of Rabbi Abba ben Bechia the prince. Now he calls Rabbi Abba ben Bechia the prince, the Nasi. Similar, he writes, one who says about a child born when Jupiter is ruling that he will be honest or modest, or about a girl born when Venus is strong that she will be attractive and pleasant. He is not asking a Chaldean and is not behaving like a Chaldean. Now, Chaldean is another word for an idol worshiper who uses the astrology system and is not turning away from the way of the Torah, even by the hand's breadth, even by a hair's breadth, because all Yisrael acknowledges and believes that the power that was delegated to the stars was delegated on condition that it fulfills God's will, and it is not in the planet's hands to benefit or to hurt according to their will and understanding. Rather, they do what they are told and commanded. Now, we have said before, and to understand this, that the world is a big wheel and it's constantly turning, and our lives are turning. We come into the world but without a choice, really. And we leave the world without a choice as well. Again, let me set this up a little bit higher because I'm losing the bottom of it. So let me see if I can find the place. This is the way of belief of all God-fearing men who delve into the wisdom of astrology. And one who is suspicious of them is suspicious of kosher people. Because even though that they're looking at what's going on and you're not looking at it, and it is his doubts and thoughts that are not kosher thoughts. It's the doubts of the person who are talking about these Talmidei Chachamim who also understand the movements of the cycles. It appears thus, through logical reasoning, that after careful consideration, that one is careful not to start his work in even hours or in hours which are unsustainable because of the planetary positions, has not sinned. He's relying on information. He can rely on the word. In other words, Hashem is sending you a message through the star. He can rely on the words of our sages for the Talmud, the sage Shmuel. He says, transgress neither rabbinical nor biblical injunction. So he says, Shmuel, the sage Shmuel, that he has not transgressed neither rabbinical or biblical injunction. So that's going to be the shir here today in astrology. The main part that we want to understand is that the Hashem, Ani Hashem Bekerev Haaretz, Hashem is in the midst of this Malchus. Haaretz is another word for Malchus. He created it. He is in the midst of it. Malchus is created. Our world straddles him. He is inside of every aspect of this manifestation of this world. And understand that it has to do with behavior, it has to do with times, places you go, people you meet, different struggles that you have, and bring different successes. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun Elevator Kol.